this goes back to one of the earlier wintering over parties at the South Pole. And it turns out that the meteorologist there was actually a neighbor. He lived not too far away in Cranford, New Jersey. I lived in Clark, and he was about 5 miles away in Cranford. And one of his next door neighbors was Phil Rizzuto. So we talked about things, and I said, I wonder if I can get him on for a phone patch. So I went over to Phil's house one evening, knocked on the door, and said, hi, I'm Julius Madey, and I know your neighbor, and I'm talking with him in the Antarctic by radio. He'd like to speak with you over the radio. Would you consider doing that? He said, sure. So we arranged a phone patch, and they had a nice conversation about the season and so on, and what was happening in the leagues and so on and so forth. All right, so this is at the South Pole. This is the first wintering over group. And in the recreation room, or basically the mess hall, there was a bar area for Friday and Saturday night stuff. And they had labeled up, because a lot of them were Gunsmoke fans, and they had labeled that the Long Branch Saloon. They put a sign over it, which was the name of the saloon that Kitty, Amanda Blake, basically proprietor in the Gunsmoke series. So, they told me about this, and I said, gee, I wonder how it would be if I were able to get a picture from her to send down there, because this is when I had the fax machine working. And I don't know how I found her, but I just looked up her number and information at the time. You can't do that. No way. I called her up and I said, excuse me, I'm an amateur radio operator in New Jersey, and I talked to these guys at South Pole, and they've got a bar that's called the Long Branch Saloon. Is there any chance that you would get on a phone call? I can connect you by radio and talk to these guys? Sure. Far? So the next thing, we arranged a schedule, and I called her up when I was in contact with KC4USN. And, I don't remember the exact conversation. I may or may not have tape recorded. I've got to look back through my old files. But they talked for a while, maybe for 20 minutes or so. And then they asked her for a photo. And she said she would send an autographed picture. So the next thing I get in the mail is this autographed photo, which I then put on the fax machine. This is the original.
Get a close up.
Okay. Which is her signature on there. It's not a print. This is actually her signature. And I made a smaller copy of that in order to fit into the drum of the fax machine, and sent it down there. And that's kind of the story of the Long Branch Saloon. And this one says, to the Long Branch, best wishes, Amanda Blake. If you will, the guts of the mechanism of a UPI telefax machine, which was originally designed to work at 100 RPM speed, and which I modified by reducing the frequency of the drive to the synchronous motors to get to the 60 RPM standard at the time, which was used for weather fax and also for the time facsimile machine, which is what all the stations in the Antarctic had. So this is the photo assembly, essentially. The black box on the bottom contained a light source, a modulated light source, and it also contained a photo sensor and a constant light source. These lenses at the top provided the pinpoint of light, modulated light, to expose a photo paper or film, 8 by 10 size, and it also had the optics to actually scan as this drum rotated at a 60 RPM or 100 RPM speed. These marks were index marks, which are also picked up by a sensor in the head. There are clips, spring clips that hold the paper down. Basically, you put the photo paper around, put the clips in place. Do this in a dark room, of course, to load it. Place it in the box. Close the box. Put the box in the machine, which goes like this. This machine does a true photo image.
Really?
That is, has a pinpoint of light that's modulated by the incoming signal, modulated intensity. And as the carriage moves across this drum, and as the drum rotates, it creates the scanned image. And this is just a piece of print paper, photo print paper, that after you've done the completion of the scan, you take it into the dark room and use standard techniques for developing and washing and drying the print. And it was possible to use either sheet film, that was this size, to do a negative, if you wanted to do a negative, or to use a sheet print stock like this and do a positive. So that's why we can reverse the sense of the demodulation, because sometimes if we put on this thumb, well, we always want to have the same sense, because that is only a positive image. This guy, we can either create a negative image or a positive image, depending upon whether we've got film in there or whether we've got a piece of print material like this. All right, so the Times Facsimile Corporation was located on 42nd Street, just right across from the Times main building. And I went over there, walked in one day and explained who I was and what I was doing with amateur radio work in the Antarctic, and asked if it was possible that they have an older fax machine or one they weren't using that I could borrow to send information or send photos down to the Antarctic and receive stuff. So they talked about it for a bit and said, yeah, we can do that. And the next thing I knew is I walked out with a fax machine, a power supply, put it in our 51 Ford, which we were driving at the time, and brought it home. And then that's the machine that you see here. And it's on quote permanent loan. They never asked for it back. It is a synchronous motor also that is driven by electronics contained within the fax machine itself. Okay, and there we go. There's a lot of tubes. Now, for some reason, there's a meter missing here. I'm not sure what that was. That's the B+ meter, okay, but we never used it. This is the motor current meter, but I never had to do much to this thing. It pretty much worked from the get-go. This is the light here, which is used to illuminate the photo in order to be able to actually see with a photo cell what the image was that it was transmitting. This is the device that goes from audio transmitter, or from the frequency modulated signal coming in from the transmitter to an audio signal that can be fed to the device for copy. Going the other way, what I did was I built a little FSK converter that was nothing more than actually a modulated diode, pin diode, that was on the VFO of the Collins transmitter, and which then, by adjusting the audio level going into that, or the voltage level rather going into that, would adjust then the amount of frequency shift I got with that variable capacity diode. And so I had to make a little modification of the KWS1 VFO in order to get FSK. I could have had an audio FSK signal, fed that into the sideband modulator, but I decided to directly modulate the VFO, create an FSK signal with that, which I also use for teletype. So I had a variable signal going in for the facsimile over 2 levels for teletype shift. This was a picture of one of the kids of one of the guys down at McMurdo, and what we did was the wife sent a color photo, and then I went into the dark room of this one. I went into the dark room and made 3 what are called color separation negatives through 3 color filters. Okay, and then enlarged them to make prints like this, 3 of them, and transmitted it down on that machine. And the photographer at McMurdo Sound then recombined them to make a color photo. This was just an experiment to see. Now the colors weren't great, but it was color. And we actually managed to send color separation negatives for that. In recognition of the work we did, my brother and I did, I was given a trip down to the Antarctic in 1959 by the U.S. Navy. Flew out to Hawaii, then down to New Zealand, and then down to McMurdo Sound. And while at McMurdo, there for about a month, I had the opportunity to operate KC4USV, and what you see here is me operating KC4USV and doing some phone patches back to the United States.
Okay, Jules, I think that came through very well. That came through very well, I believe. So if you could possibly get Dr. Morgan's contact now, I think it would be excellent. So here is KC4USW over to K2KGJ.